Alex.
All right,
we
you
go
rock
live?
stars, we're
Can we
going
go live and
live.
stand for the pledge? We're in?
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, with
indivisible.
liberty and justice for all.
As a way of respecting, honoring, and creating awareness about our past, we begin our village board meetings by acknowledging that New Paltz is on the ancestral land of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people.
Ariana, I don't think that okay, short-term rental law, we're going to have a conversation about that, that we need to add to the agenda. So that would become item number 4. And then all the other additions I made to the agenda was just adding some detail, nothing about adding additional items. So I'd like to motion that we move the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And while we're at it, I motion that we move the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did we do the land acknowledgement? You did, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Someone want to do the announcement about the county annual application period for agricultural districts?
Sure. We got this in the mail from the county, and they just asked that we help promote this. The application period is basically the entire month of March. So if anybody needs to apply to be considered agricultural land, actually, I don't know if we have this up on the website just yet. I was going to check them earlier today, but did not, but then got sidetracked. So this information will be on our website. But basically applications can be mailed to the Ulster County Planning Department, and information can be found on the county website as well. And that's it.
Thanks. So we have a public hearing that's still open. This is the proposal to change the one-way timing on a section of Huguenot Street. So currently you can only go northbound between Broadhead and Mulberry on Sunday mornings, and all the other times it's two-way. So the proposal involves changing it so it would become northbound only 24/7. I've reached out to some folks on Huguenot Street, encouraged them to keep talking to their neighbors. I had a fairly lengthy conversation with an individual who lives within this section that's being considered. And yeah, I'm of the mindset that we continue to keep it open and hope that we get some additional feedback. I also have on my to-do list to reach out to the Bike Ped committee to ask them to chew on the idea. So I'm going to reach out to Chairperson Dan Lipson on that. But do we have anyone who wants to make a public comment on this evening? Okay, if not, then I suggest we just continue along. Let's bounce into public comment. Dan Schniedewind is here. Dan, you want to make your public comment?
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Mayor, and hi, everyone. My name is Dan Schniedewind. I'm a resident of the town of New Paltz. I just want to provide a very brief follow-up to your discussion from your last meeting about the possibility of pursuing a water sewer agreement with Trans Hudson for the corner of Route 299 and North Platte. I think everyone understands why such an agreement is an appealing opportunity for the village, and residents are very fortunate that you take the water sewer infrastructure as seriously as you do, despite the budgetary limits that you face. As you move forward, there are a few factors that I hope you will consider or continue to consider as they should be addressed in any future agreement. I know that all of you value so-called smart growth principles like mixed use, density, pedestrian safety, principles that have a lot of support in New Paltz. What Trans Hudson is currently proposing is a de facto thruway rest stop with a fast food drive-through intended to pull drivers off the thruway. As you know, a restaurant drive-through is expressly prohibited under the gateway zoning that was adopted unanimously by the town board less than 18 months ago, which was guided by anti-sprawl values that you all share. Barely 2 months ago, the town board again voted unanimously to deny Trans Hudson's request for a special zoning waiver that would have allowed a restaurant drive-through, and Trans Hudson is now trying to get permission for the restaurant drive-through from the town ZBA. Even without this restaurant drive-through, Trans Hudson's own traffic study showed that average wait times for westbound traffic on 299 would become more than twice as long as 2019 levels if the project was built, reaching more than 71 seconds average wait time during weekday rush hour. So again, that's without the restaurant drive-through, which wasn't part of the plan when that study was done. Adding a restaurant drive-through will bring significantly more traffic volume to and through the 299 Putt Corners intersection than was projected in that 2019 study. And so just in weighing the potential water sewer benefits against serious traffic deterioration at this pivotal intersection, the village board could tell the applicant to remove the restaurant drive-through as a precondition for the extension of water sewer service. The drive-through also exacerbates significant safety concerns for users of the Empire State Trail, as it will draw substantially higher car traffic volume through a proposed driveway into the site from Route 299. The Bike Ped Committee has publicly called for the removal of this driveway from the plan, calling it, quote, a major safety risk, unquote, in a letter to the town planning board. This was prior to the restaurant drive-through being added to the proposal. So the 299 driveway will bring drivers, many of them coming from the thruway and not expecting to encounter a heavily used bike pedestrian thoroughfare across two-way bike and pedestrian traffic on the EST, often under already challenging traffic and sun glare conditions, as I know you all know. The driveway is inessential because of the larger entrance and exit on North Putt. And so the village could potentially tell Trans Hudson that water sewer would not be extended until this dangerous driveway is removed. While it's true, as came up at the last meeting, that the DOT has offered preliminary support for this driveway, we all know that the DOT has very low standards for bike ped safety, and its fate will ultimately be determined by the developer and the planning board. That's not something that the DOT alone can, insist upon, or their approval does not mean that it will be so. Finally, there are a number of other red flags I would run through, but I'm not going to, just to keep my comment brief. You have other things to do. I can't help but mention that in their recent ZBA appeal, Trans Hudson justified their request to be exempted from having to build a second story, as is required by the gateway zoning, by saying that, quote, national retailers, unquote, would not be interested in the second story space, and that it would therefore be unreasonable to expect Trans Hudson to rent the space on the second story to local tenants, who they described as, quote, lower quality renters who would pay less rent, end quote. It's also worth pointing out that putting an EST connector trail through the back of the property, which I think everyone supports, is not a concession by the developer. It's a basic public safety requirement that any project proposed for this site will need to include. Further, Trans Hudson is currently proposing to place this connector trail in what is supposed to be an entirely vegetated buffer. So that's something else that the village could bring up in a conversation about a water sewer agreement, pulling the connector trail out of that buffer. And finally, Trans Hudson continues to claim to the various town boards that the village has, for all intents and purposes, already agreed to extend municipal water sewer, repeatedly using this claim as leverage to extract more concessions from the various town review boards. The village board, all of you, showed great leadership in the Kingstonian pilot process. And while I'm not claiming that the two situations are exactly analogous, I think this is another occasion in which the likely irreversible impacts of a potential developer agreement must be carefully scrutinized in order to make sure that the safety of EST users is not sacrificed, that traffic is not made considerably worse, and that widespread community sentiment about the direction New Paltz should be headed is not disregarded. Thanks very much for the chance to talk.
Yeah, thanks, Dan, for continuing to stay on top of this and, you know, walk us through all of the points. You know, if you ever want to, you know, chat with me about any one of them, you know, do not hesitate to pick up the phone. You know, I'd love to, you know, talk it through with you and, you know, discuss, you know, how I view different pieces of this entire project. We can also talk offline about pilots for mixed use in the Kingstonian, and, you know, could a project like this be eligible to pursue a pilot based on the IDA current policy changes, which is pretty frightening in my mind. So yeah,
thanks for that offer, and
yeah,
I'm happy to continue the conversation with you or with.
Don't hesitate to call, and, you know, we can figure out ways to follow up with the DOT. That's not an easy agency to deal with, you know, especially when, you know, they're going to have strong opinions about that driveway idea.
It's so good to see you here, Dan.
It's good to see you too. Good to see all of you. Thanks again for.
What's your degree in again? Are you still in school? Are you finishing?
We don't need to get into.
No, I want you to show that you're a smarty pants. I want to give you some props. Our hometown smart.
That's not
dedicated person.
You have
who I met when he was in high school on Greenworks.
All right. Well, you have other people in public comment, fortunately for me, so I'm going to step aside and.
All right. Thanks again, Dan.
Thank you. Have a good night.
To be continued.
So Joe Graneri from our Department of Public Works has joined us. So one of the things that Joe has done a great job with over the last few years is helping us inventory our different pieces of heavy equipment. And, you know, one of the things that we did early on in my tenure with assistance from staff, especially Joe, is to eyeball the age of our different vehicles, our different larger pieces of equipment, and then figure out, you know, how long we've been using them, you know, what makes sense as far as a replacement schedule. And we've been, you know, very aggressive as a board and chasing down opportunities when we see trucks that should replace the old, you know, terrible for the environment, polluting type trucks that we had, or trucks that would break down, trucks that Joe and the other team members would have to keep together with just a lot of hard work and extra attention. And in snowstorms, I think it makes a ton of sense to have reliable trucks. Like when we're paying staff overtime and, you know, they're up all night plowing roads, we want them to have very reliable equipment. And I'm very proud of the record over the last couple of years making upgrades. But this is a tough time financially, and, you know, Joe and Blue and the DPW team provided us with a wish list of heavy equipment. There was one item that was something that, you know, Joe and Nick were also suggesting that we seriously consider including in this budget, and that's replacing the skid steer. And one of the reasons that we were going to do that is because we got a nice estimate in terms of what we could receive by trading in the old skid steer and purchasing the new one that also had some additional mechanical advantages. But I'll let Joe explain from here about, you know, his take on, you know, why this makes sense, and, you know, fill us in with some more background, Joe.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Just want to say good evening to everybody. Hope everybody is doing well. So yeah, every year, you know, it's budget time. Blue comes to me and Nick, and, you know, tells us to put our wish list together per se. And you know, we have some bigger trucks that, you know, are due up. But with working with Tim and the village board, you know, we're on a good program right now with two of our trucks, newest ones. So I feel like once one's paid off, if we can just keep that rotation going, we'll be in, really good shape. So when we put our wish list together this year, skid steer was on there. We use that a lot, especially this winter with snow removal. And the last couple of years, it's broken down a couple times. And because of its age, it takes a lot longer to get parts. And the last couple times it was out for like a month at a time, and it costs $2,000-$3,000 to fix. So when we did some price quotes, I was shocked to see that we got a trade estimate of almost half of what we originally paid for the machine back in 1996. So, I did some other research, and other machines similar that's going out to bid by municipalities or that are for sale on equipment sites are probably about $5,000 to $6,000 lower than what we got. So I felt like it was a good opportunity for us to take advantage of the value that we're going to get back out of it. We completely understand with the times going on that the budget's tight, but I felt like I just had to, express our thoughts on why this, if anything, this one should get purchased this year.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So, you and I have been discussing this for a few days now, and I've been bouncing the idea off of our treasurer. I think it's really important not to just keep kicking the can down the road with a lot of this equipment. I remember early on speaking with the insurance folks who've come in and actually inspect our vehicles and our heavy equipment, and they explained to me that the average age of our fleet was considered pretty old, and the condition that it was in was way above average considering how old it was. That was the feedback that I got from our insurance agents, and I think it's because our staff takes a great deal of pride in maintaining the equipment that our taxpayers own and squeezing as much life out of our equipment as possible. So, thanks, Joe, and the rest of the team for always doing, taking all that extra care. And I think what makes sense for our board as far as of attack to replace the skid steer is to purchase this item later in the summer. And as you explained to me, there's like a 60 to 90 day lead time, so we can kind of take advantage of that delay. And then we could bake this expense into when we get additional funds for a new bond anticipation note. And then that will allow us to make those first payments in the next fiscal year as opposed to this fiscal year. So essentially we'll be committing to paying for this item next fiscal year as opposed to in this budget. And I think that gives us a little bit of runway, and this way we can time the acquisition of the skid steer with next winter, and keep our fingers crossed that the one that we have now will hold up and will still be able to get a reasonable amount of money as a trade-in. So that's my suggestion as a plan of attack. Curious if you had any other feedback, or did you get that bounce?
I mean, that will work. I mean, we're going to get to the point where it's, we use it all year round. Obviously, wintertime is the most used time that we use it. My biggest thing is just the trade-in quote that they gave us is only good per se for a certain amount of time. So I just don't want to, I don't think it'll change significantly, but I don't want to see a sticker shock if we lose, I'm just going to throw a number, just say $1,000 off of it, come, end of July, end of August, September, you know what I mean?
Do you have the numbers off the top of your head in terms of the cost of the new one and the the trade-in value that we were offered?
The new one with a new snow blower, because that's getting pretty tired too, because that actually broke down a couple times on us while we were doing snow removal this year, was 57,000. And then the trade-in quote for ours was 14,000.
And what year is ours? I mean, ours is north of 20 years old, right?
96 or 95. So we paid 32,000 for that back in 95, and they're giving us 14 as a trade-in. So, I mean, I think that's pretty good.
Right.
So
and
the new,
and you pointed out that, you've done research. If we were to purchase a comparable used machine, that seems like a very good trade-in value, where if you bought it from someone else, it would.
And that's, you got to take in consideration too, ours has been, garage kept, so it's got its value because of the way we take care of things too.
Yeah. Well, I think it's,
Yeah.
I think I wanted to have you here tonight so we could hear directly from you. I think it's, valuable for our board and for our public, to hear about, the nuts and bolts about like what we're actually considering on a regular basis. So our board can continue to deliver, because we're going to be wrestling over what items are included or not included in our budget over the next month or so. So, we have a little bit of background on this piece. But did anyone else have any questions for Joe this evening?
Yeah, Joe, how long is this price locked in for, if it is locked in?
Well, it's not necessarily completely locked in at the moment. I mean, he told me that, 2-3 months is a pretty good number. He said it's hard to say. He said he hasn't seen numbers change drastically, but obviously the longer you wait, the more it could change, per se, is what I was told. I would think that if we said we were going to do this, it would be locked in at that point in time. It's almost like how when we got the new jet router, we got a guarantee quote for that if we went out to bid and nobody bid higher than that the company that we bought the jet router from was going to at least guarantee us a certain amount of money. I just look at it as like Tim and the board, you guys have been on it, have done a really good job of getting us newer stuff. And I've spent a lot less time fixing things and worrying about other important things, like especially getting my new plow truck this year, I think was one of the lifesavers. So having Nick's new truck that's on his third winter and my truck, it's definitely helped us out for sure.
Yeah, we have to factor in labor hours lost when something breaks down, not being out there to serve the community as well. I'm just sort of curious that, I haven't seen any projections yet, I haven't looked into it, but there's bound to be an increase in commercial construction throughout the year. I'm just wondering if that will impact the price. That's why I asked the question.
I don't know if it didn't, to be honest with you, I don't really know. Yeah. I mean, like I said, when he told me that number and then I looked in our file and seen what we paid for the machine brand new, I was kind of like almost like sticker shocked in a way, because I honestly thought just from looking around that they were going to come back with like $5-6 grand, and especially trade-in. I mean, if anybody's bought in cars, they always try to kill you on a trade-in. So when I seen that and then looked to see what other bids were out there, what they've gone through on some of these auction sites, that number was, $3,000-$4,000 higher than anything else that I've seen out there.
Sure. And this trade-in includes the blower, the blower that you've got on it now. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would trade in the blower that we have now, and a couple other pieces that have no choice but to go with it. But the new one would come with a new blower and a new bucket. The forks that we have for it and the snow blade we have for it, that will all cross over to the new machine.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And thanks for, reading the memo where you, me, and Bill are all wearing the uniform for this evening. We all have dark hats and dark sweatshirts. I don't know why anyone else is not wearing the same stuff. We're all supposed to be. That's what the memo said.
Well, at least I'm in a quiet spot where you don't hear kids screaming and dogs barking.
See, Bill's wearing it.
Clearly,
All right.
our most rebellious this evening is Michelle.
Wild. Where's your hat?
I'm wearing a sea grape
Thanks
hat.
so much, Joe. It's really helpful to get all this detail and have depth to what's going on. And my knee-jerk reaction was like, well, what can we cut to do it? And when Tim came up with Nancy with this scenario, I was very happy that it didn't involve a cut, but actually involved just being smart about when we buy and doing our financing. So I was really happy to hear that. So thank you for finding that solution.
No
That
problem. I mean,
Sounds like could work.
I know Tim and Nancy don't like hearing from me when it comes time to budget time, but if somebody doesn't try to push forward to try to help out, I mean, I think about it. I got a lot more time working for the village. So I just want to see it be easier for all of us, for the future.
Yeah, don't take it personally. Nancy doesn't want to hear from any one of us.
Oh, yeah.
No, I mean, she told me that I can't, I wasn't supposed to ask for anything for another 2 more years. So I already broke that, but this is a small ticket item compared to what I normally bring to you.
Yeah, that's why she's a good treasurer.
Thanks, Joe.
I just wish the diesel grant could have worked out for us.
Yeah, we tried.
That's kind of a bummer,
Yeah.
I just wanted to say thanks, Joe, to you guys at the DPW. It's been such a busy winter, and thanks for all you do.
No problem. And I'll relay the message to everybody tomorrow. I mean, that's what we're here for. In one way, as much as the snow stinks, it definitely has kept us busy, and we get through next week and maybe a couple weeks through March, and we should be home stretch for springtime, hopefully.
Yeah. All right, bouncing on to our business agenda.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Joe. Does anyone want to summarize items related to number 1? We can let Jeff start us off because it's climate related. So we have Jeff Demansky here from Hudson. He'll talk to us about the CCA program that we're enrolled in. There we go.
You want the hat and the dark
all cap sweatshirt? Yep.
Nicely done.
Good.
Hey, Jeff.
What's up, KT? It's good to see you.
I know. Good to see you.
I don't see your
I
hat
know
on,
it's good
KT.
for you to see me. Huh?
I said I don't see your hat on, KT.
Yeah, well, we're not really that strict with the uniform.
So thanks for having me very much. And I miss seeing you guys in the strange times that we've been in. I miss our office hours that we used to hold up there with some frequency. I promise to keep it to a brief summary. I'm here to give a summary of a lengthy webinar live recording that we created a couple of weeks ago as a performance update for how the program has done to date. And so I can share some slides if it's worth your time, but in brief, we covered a number of key topics in that performance update. So it's both backwards looking, and it's current looking, and it's forward looking. And so what we covered in that presentation is assuming always that, in the outreach and education we don't assume that everyone knows what we're talking about when we're talking about the community choice aggregation program that the village joined as part of the Hudson Valley Community Power Partnership. And so we defined that in our overview of this presentation, and I can resend that link to you. And we revisit the communities that are part of it. And then we talk about how the program has performed to date, and I'd be glad to go into detail for that. But then we move into the current events about how the program has evolved, as community choice aggregation, which was a program enabled in the state in 2016 as a way to foster more renewables onto the New York grid in a way that was both protective and financially beneficial, offering competitive rates for the New York utility customers in a way that was protective of them, continues to evolve. And continues to be a platform for bringing easy decision-making and clarity and protection to utility customers, the members of the partner communities. And so there has been, as the village probably knows, a focus to not only use this program as a way to get competitive supply rates for renewables, supply being what somebody pays for in terms of where their electricity is generated. But with the significance of community solar as an option by which people can reap economic benefit by supporting local solar projects, CCA is expanding how it can serve as a resource for good decision making there too. And so we talk about that as well in the presentation, including very significantly how with the anticipated completion by Central Hudson, which we anticipate in April of this year, 2021, that they will consolidate their billing. Meaning not only where will everything supply related for the community choice aggregation program take place on the Central Hudson bill, but should somebody take advantage of community solar, everything will be on that one single Central Hudson bill as well. Where to date, with people choosing to opt in to being a community solar subscriber, it's been a two-bill situation where they get credits on the Central Hudson bill, but they get a separate bill from the community solar developer. So with that creation, with that advent of consolidated billing, it enables the community choice aggregation program. And should the village choose to renew the program with the other communities and communities that will join, there are two opt-out possibilities that are possible for the community to bring to the community members. An opt-out program for the supply rate and an opt-out program for community solar. And again, this is described in some depth in the presentation as well. And then we talk about what are the timing and next steps for doing that, which includes a simple non-binding resolution just to say that we are interested in moving forward as a community to be part of the request for proposals for the next contract exploration, which would take place about May of this year, for a relatively seamless new contract to be in place for the July 1st start, where the current 2-year contract ends on June 30th. And so that is the overall presentation of what we do. And I'm happy to go into detail about what we talk about in the presentation. I can pull up slides to reference some of the materials I'm talking about, but I didn't want to burden you in your schedule with a detailed walk through the slides that I do have a recording of. So I'll stop there for a moment.
So Jeff, are you going to all the different CCA members and sharing this same update, like, including the town and other CCA members?
Yeah, we spoke to the town on the 18th, and we did a blended presentation there. And we spoke to Marbletown back on the 16th, and they had me actually do a 45-minute presentation. So it was almost a parallel walkthrough of the whole presentation. But that's exactly what we're doing.
Great. Yeah, I think this is an improvement because that was always, I think, confusing to folks is the idea of separate bills. So now that they'll be included will, I think, help folks wrap their heads around what's involved. It'll be hopefully a lighter lift.
Any questions about the performance of the program or any experiences that people are kind of reflect on?
It's been 2 years.
I know, like that, yeah.
That's what I'm saying right now. I think the fact that we haven't heard a ton might be good. I don't know. Has anybody or is that not good? I don't know.
Well, I can share that we've had, my team, what my nonprofit team does is we are the helpline, email, phone line, and we've had 7,000 interactions since the program started. So it's a good sign. People are taking advantage of it. What we also share on one of the tables in the presentation is we show that there has been opting out. There's been an attrition from the program, which speaks to the power of the program and giving people that flexibility to not be part of the program if they don't want to be, which is, we've had a challenging year, in terms of that symbiotic result that we're looking for. We started the program with a fixed rate that was less than the 12-month average for the non-renewable rate than Central Hudson had been charging for the previous 12 months. But particularly because of the economic impact of the pandemic, we did not deliver on that component of the program. And so it's one of the reasons that we did not, do an automatic renewal for people entering into our communities. And the attrition rate reflects that people are taking advantage of the ability to reflect out. That's
And
the
you
bad
think
news.
that's primarily just because it's not cheaper and it's
That's
financial?
some of the reasons. I mean, the most opting out happened right at the beginning of the program because of the lack of clarity, the bad experiences that people had with the private marketplace, where they didn't understand how this was different. So there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction. The predominant amount of opting out happened in that beginning process. But then there was some that opted out. But there was quite a few, actually, and particularly in the New Paltz area, New Paltz Town and Village, of people opting in as they heard about it more, as they understood what the program was. We had quite a few opt-ins from these communities.
Were those folks opting in, they had to opt in because they were using a different ESCO as
Oh, right.
Central Hudson?
That's one of the reasons. And some people who had opted out, who didn't have an ESCO, chose to opt back in after understanding what the program was about. But there definitely were a number of people who had an ESCO, by our encouragement, compared the rates, assured that there was no strange exit fees for that other ESCO, and then chose to opt into our program.
So tell us a little bit about what was going on from like a macroeconomic perspective in terms of how was Central Hudson able to provide generation less expensively than the fixed rate we had from our ESCO?
There was two dips in the rates on Central Hudson side. One happened at the start of, we had a great start comparatively, but it's a matter of the demand on the gas market, which reflects what the electricity rates would be. So we had a mild winter in 2018, 2019, and an excess of gas going into the summer right when our program started, which caused a 2-month dip right at the start. And you can see this chart in our presentation too. But then we recovered and things were looking great and trending up beautifully, where there was going to be fantastic recovery. Back into April of 2020, our rates were below the utility rates. And then there's just a dip because of the impact of the economy. Businesses shutting down, less demand for electric and gas drove the utility rate. One single dip, the May drop was significant. And there's been a recovery since, trending recovery, but that drop and that low demand just for gas and electric allowed the utility rates to be lower, just because of that. Basically, again, it's the gas and electricity linkage in the marketplace.
So I forget, how often do you renew rates? And does that involve having different ESCOs bid every X amount of time periods?
We set it out right at the start. So right when the program starts, it's a fixed rate for that fixed period. And so we're doing it for the first time again.
So what's the length of it? It's a 2-year or 3-year?
It was a 2-year. We had a 2-year contract. And it depends what that term period is based on what the offers are. We had 3 years offers. We had 18-month offers when we started, but we collectively agreed 2 was the right.
Yep.
And things are looking good. We talk about this too. Things are looking, the bad news was the performance, but the great news is that the benchmarks in the market looking forward means that what we're going into right now is very much looking like a fantastic time for fixing the rates going forward, where it actually will likely yield that win-win-win scenario of cost, renewables, and consumer protection looking forward. So the decision before the village is to pass and you should have received from Jewel, but I'll send it again. A template resolution that's a dual resolution in one, where it'd be decision to move forward with being part of the RFP for supply. And potentially, if there's interest in doing the opt-out community solar, to be part of the RFP or to be part of an independent RFP for the village for a supply of community solar for an opt-out program as well. And that is news. I mean, that's the new thing that's allowed by consolidated billing.
Would that be the same RFP or two different RFPs?
Two different RFPs.
Right.
There'd
Okay.
be, and the first RFP, the supply RFP, would be an RFP for all of the communities, which at this point is hopefully would be 14 communities. Rhinebeck, Saugerties, Gardner, and Nelsonville and Putnam Valley are all joining. So that would be one RFP for supply, but each community will likely have an RFP for opt-out community solar should they choose to proceed with that, because these are 2 megawatt fields, maybe a little bit larger 5 megawatt fields, which are pretty much aligned with the size of a community that would want to do this. So there'll be, each community would have one or more independent contracts through Jewel for the community solar supply.
Hey, Jeffrey, I have a question.
Yes.
We had a brief email exchange about a year ago. I'm not clear exactly. Maybe you can explain how much our bill is going towards actual supply and what's going to infrastructure build. Could you clarify that a little bit?
The average customer, the predominant amount of that they pay on their utility bill, it's typically the most is for delivery. What you'd say is the infrastructure side. I think that equivalent. That's what Central Hudson makes money on. That's the infrastructure, the wires, the substations, the meter itself, the repair service, the billing service. That's the infrastructure side. That is 60% or sometimes even a little bit more for a customer. Rare that it's even a 50-50 split. So the supply is 40% or less of that total mix. And so what we are affecting through the supply portion of the CCA program is that 40% on average for a customer. To make a distinction, though, it's pretty exciting. Community solar, the way that community solar would work through this, which is the most predominant model, it's the guaranteed percentage savings off of the total bill, supply and delivery. And so they're two parallel programs. And it's like a menu in a restaurant with appetizers and entrees. You can mix and match. You can say no to both of them. You can say yes to both of them, or you can mix and match. The community has to do both, but an individual customer can say yes or no to both components.
Good. Any other questions for Jeff this evening? So we're gonna that's one resolution regarding the 2 RFPs.
Yes, non-binding, just to proceed. And so that we're hoping to have all those signed in place by March.
I'd like to get that on our next village board agenda, so Ariana can make that happen.
Excellent.
Okay. Anything else before we continue?
Jeff, just send me anything you have. If you want to send me any of the slides, I'll just put a link to it in our minutes so that anybody can read it if they want to dive deeper. Thank you.
I'll send you the link to the presentation again. I'll send you the resolution to make sure you have it, and I'll send you the PDF of the slides that are of the recording too. So thank you so much.
Perfect. That's exactly what I'd love. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, next item agenda item. Rental registry and rental index. Alex, you want to walk us through?
Sure. So one thing that the Landlord Tenant Relations Council has been looking at and, very interested in since I got onto the board is how on earth to, get more and better contact information and basically make it so we have this awesome rental registry law, right? And then we have this registry that's available, and then, it seems like there's kind of just, and that's available online, and you can call the billing department and get information if you need it, if you know what you're asking for. So anyway, long story short, if we could get, the landlords to be more consistent in including all necessary contact information, such as emails and stuff, all the stuff that's actually on the registration form, to be filled out. And then, I guess the next step would be for it to be accessible. And so the contact information is really, really important because too much, especially during this pandemic, tenants reach out with an issue, because they know we have a landlord tenant relations council, and, they know they have me too, and all of us, to help them out. And the help only goes so far when they don't even know who their actual landlord is, and I've done it in so many different rental situations here over the years too, where, I'm writing a check or a money order and I put it on my door by a certain time on a certain day every month, and it's all copacetic. I signed a lease and everything, but there's never any way to get in touch with them besides, an LLC phone number. There's no email or anything. So that problem has really stood out during the pandemic. And then it's also really difficult on my end to be able to, get information to landlords and, and so on. So if we could at least just, start getting that information more consistently from the rental registry forms, and, make it clear that it'll be available publicly, it would be such an amazing step in the right direction. Yeah, it just needs to be so much more accessible. I don't even know.
So, Alex, what do you think about that idea? Because, I think Ariana and myself and you, we've all been you've been brainstorming with KT as well. So one of the things that Corey had brought up is, and I think the way to get around this is just state on the actual form that a landlord completes when they register something that says your contact information will be available publicly, for exactly the reasons that you've just described. So then, it's clear that we've alerted landlords that, their information will be available because, they're running a business and they need their customers to be able to access them. I think in a lot of ways, to me, I'm scratching my head a little bit. If you're running a business, why wouldn't you want your customers to be able to communicate with you easily? But I guess that's not what every landlord has chosen to do. But I feel like maybe a way to get everyone comfortable with the idea that this information may be disclosed is just putting it on the form, stating that this is one of the reasons why we are collecting this information. What do you think about that approach?
Yeah, I mean, if that would make everyone more comfortable with, making it just so much more readily available, then we'll go for it. I'm no lawyer, but I feel like, that's kind of implied in the law. It's anything that you can call and get. I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah, let's make it even more clear, and that makes everyone more comfortable. It has been so frustrating. I can't even express I want to be able to help people, and we have all these mechanisms, in place. And then at the end of the day, it's you can't get assistance from some of these, let's say it does become a legal thing, whatever they reached out about, you can't get legal assistance from any of these pro bono groups, that would literally just provide steps, and this is how you resolve this issue and so on, when you don't have enough information to provide them, in my own situation a couple of years ago with a rental I was renting in, where I didn't have heat or hot water. I wasn't able to get legal services of the Hudson Valley to represent me because there was so much missing information in the case. It happens all the time. So yeah, this would be a really, really, really big step. I think it's so simple, but yeah. I don't really see why all the info that's on the registration form can't just be way more readily available though, because it is supposed to be all in an index that's available upon request, anytime. Because the other, another big issue is, tenants tend to, they'll sign a lease, there's, it turns out there's only LLC info on it or whatever the case may be. And then it turns out there's the landlord who is behind that LLC. And then they have a bunch of property managers, quote unquote, that aren't, listed necessarily on their form. And, there's additional layers to the contact information that is in many cases missing, so it's not just like the email of like the person who owns the building, it should be the email, and other contact information for people that are dealing with that rental property. If somebody can collect your rent check from you, from your door, you should have their email.
So I didn't realize some of
Right.
the issue here was like concern about privacy for the landlords. Is that, and I think that all you said was true about like it's a business. I think it's more than implied in our law. So I think I'm willing. I was listening to you, but also trying to see about that. No, it's not. That doesn't fly.
Have we
that
gotten an
logic.
opinion? Have we gotten an opinion from our attorney
About updating the registry
about
to
whether
be
we can
the
just
index?
take all the data that's on a rental registration form and make it public?
Corey said he was going to ask, and I don't think he circled back.
Well, why don't you just email Will now and ask him?
Okay.
Just email
So-
Will and Stephanie with exactly that question.
Yeah, this is a dimension to it that didn't punch through for me. I thought we were just having technical issues or capacity issues, or I really thought it was technical issues, because there was a while that we were posting the quote unquote indexed. I don't believe it had contact information on it. I would have to go back and look. I think it was just address and inspection status. So there's
Yeah.
a couple of different things going on here. And
So then we weren't
Totally.
doing it. So then we've never done it
Correct.
before.
no,
Correct.
we've never done the contact information part
Right, and
of
that's
it.
what we're talking about though.
Right.
We're only-
So I don't know if we still have a technical issue with the just getting that part up, because it hasn't been updated. And I just think whatever pandemic, let's just figure it out. We haven't done it in a while. We need to fix it so we can do it again. I don't know if Ariana,
We have been updating it.
we have? Okay. So
Yeah,
I'm corrected
I mean,
then.
Alana was. I think that now that she's in a slightly different role, it's back on my plate.
Okay. So
So yeah, that was still happening. And I just wanted to say that Corey did speak with Will about this. Corey and I talked about it, and he did speak with Will, and Will did not give the green light to publicize all of it, but he didn't give the red light either. What he said was, this is public information. So like, this is foilable. People call, they just ask for it, they can get it. It is public information, is what Will said.
Well, everything's public information, but we need just a like.
Right. It
we
was
need
not
to
not the
ask-
clear ask that you're saying.
Right. We
But-
need
but I
to
was just saying,
ask
Corey
whether
did
we can
speak with
take
Will.
all of the information on a rental registration form completed by a landlord and index it and make it publicly available. Like, will anyone's head explode if we do that? Not necessarily, like, will our attorneys get scared? That's all.
I
Ask
mean,
that.
if somebody can call up and get this information because it's public.
That's what I'm saying. I have a big issue with it. It's only publicly available to people who are able to navigate certain hours.
Right. No, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
And so it's not
like,
publicly
if it's
available to
accessible that way.
renters.
That's just a mode, right? A mode is a telephone call. A mode is putting on the website. So I would be surprised to hear an attorney say that those two different things are not. Those, it's a distinction without a difference between those two things. Like, that's
Okay, ask our attorney and see what they say.
Cool. Thank you.
what?
But why not? Why not just ask? I mean, if they like, I'm philosophically in agreement. Like, yes, anything foilable is technically public and we can technically
Oh
broadcast.
yeah, let's ask. I'm not saying don't ask.
Let's just ask,
And then there is also I can't even remember if you just brought this up or not. There is a data gap, right? There's a lot of missing data here. We've had the high school kids try to go through those binders and figure stuff out, and there's a lot of inconsistency in filling it out completely. So if we could get a bigger push on that, that would be awesome.
I would also,
And I don't even know if is this 70? I can't remember how many is listed on here. I mean, maybe that's a project for a little internship, calling them all up and getting the information. I don't know.
With the data gap, that like I've been actually having an issue with that, because I don't know if actually all that information has been missing. It's just missing from what I've been able to access all at once,
Well, I know, just to use emails as an example, that was a often skipped field, like you said. And in this day and age, you need a cell phone and an email of your landlord, and vice versa.
Exactly. So it basically, my big issue has been in summary, we have this really awesome law that like protects safety, and it's good for all parties and stuff. And it's wonderful. And part of that law is for the registration forms, all info collecting it, to be indexed and publicly available. But then it's not even publicly available, to people of my work schedule, to me as someone who's supposed to be liaising with, all these folks who have been reaching out for help, but haven't been able to get that help either because they don't ask the perfect question when they do get a chance to call. That's something I've noticed happens a lot too. They call, they're like, hi, I was told to call the billing department, ask about this apartment I'm in, and they find out, yes, you have been inspected. And then that's kind of it, because they don't know that they have to actually say and I need all the information, from it. But that window of time just passed, and there goes another person that could have been helped. And then they come to me or the Landlord-Tenant Relations Council, and myself and these volunteers on this council can't even help that tenant because, we all work in the daytime. So it's just been this frustrating situation, because we spend so much energy, as a village, and our billing department does such a good job of collecting this information. And it's gotten to a point where it's only benefiting the landlords in many cases, because, they're getting the security to know that their apartment is, safe and their tenants aren't going to die in a fire. But on the other end of things, the tenants can't get the information that's promised by the law. So thanks for having this conversation. We'll figure it out, I guess.
Thanks for articulating the issues. I'm pretty sure we all are in agreement on it. Nodding.
yeah, this index should be a useful resource. That's what we want, and we think that will benefit the renters and the landlords. The landlords need to, hear exactly what's going on their properties, and, having open lines of communication just makes a ton of sense for everyone involved.
So I just got a message from Corey. He's definitely watching our meeting. Hi, Corey. He said that Will says it's essentially okay.
Essentially okay.
That's an attorney's. That's an attorney saying, "Go for it."
That's not a green light. That's a greenish light.
I don't know why the essential qualifier isn't okay. Okay.
No, I think Alex is right. Essentially okay is that's absolutely okay in attorney speak.
It's legalese.
So it's emphatically okay.
Right.
Yeah. Wait, that's awesome. Okay, so what do we need to do next? What's the next step now?
I think this was a custom report when we originally did it in Unicity, which is the software that all this stuff is in, right? I mean, Corey and Ari are way more up to date on me. I think we might have to add fields to that customized report or whatever.
Yeah,
they
can this
call
just be
it.
like a Google form? Like, I looked at the fee schedule 2 days ago and geez, isn't that nice to deal with now that Ariana put it as a Google form?
I've
It's
been
just like,
working on a jot form for this.
yeah.
So the jot
Because
form,
that was the whole point of our jot form, like us moving to jot forms, is that we could also charge people through them. So part of moving Alana away from helping the building department means that all of this is now on my plate, and I haven't had as much time as I would like to focus on it, but I have been working on it with Corey. And we're putting something together that will work for auto-populating a spreadsheet, basically. That could just live
Amazing.
on the website.
So yeah, if there's any database work or anything that needs to be done, let me know. I tend to be surrounded by young people who need hours volunteering for things.
I wish it was a database issue. That's not it at all. It's literally like creating the jot form is just a little bit complicated, and I need like time when I'm not responding to emails or having other things come up when I could just sit and focus on it.
So I should stop emailing you 24/7. If I want this done, I'll
That's
leave you
not
alone.
what I was saying.
You're the best.
Essentially, that's
Enjoy your
what she's
emails,
saying.
Alex.
Cool. I'm excited. This is going to be great. Thank you.
But yeah, we're moving in the right direction, and I'm sorry that it's not already up and running, but this is like totally where we need to take a lot of our forms into jot forms, so that it just streamlines everything. We can put in prices, we could have it auto populate spreadsheets, and then it will like make all of our lives easier.
Wait, so one quick question then. So what's up with like anybody, like let's say a landlord just like, re-up their registration like, last week for everything. So are we not going to be able to get them onto this form for a year? Or
Well, that's up to how we make it happen.
Okay.
We could, one of the things that Corey and I were talking about is like having like any information that already exists, we could like that could be the databasing stuff. Like we could
That's what I
have
was
somebody input that into jot form. Sure, totally.
Cool. I will
Yeah.
take this to landlord tenant relations tomorrow night because they keep asking about timelines and stuff, and also how can we all help? So please use us.
I mean, if there's like somebody who's an expert in jot forms, I would be happy to have them help me create the jot forms. But you have to really be familiar with it.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Okay, so the next item is the short-term rental law. The reason that I wanted to revisit this is, I feel like we were being clever and maybe too clever with our law, and where we made a distinction between commercially zoned districts and residential zone districts. And I thought about this, as it seems like we have an interest in more mixed use. So then our commercial zone districts end up being mixed use, which by definition requires a residential component. So maybe we should just simplify our law further and set it up so you can Airbnb be your place if it is your primary resident, and then not make a distinction about whether it's a commercial zone or a residential zone. So just for the entire village, not, we wouldn't be making distinctions for B1 and B2.
I'm trying to remember why we came about the first approach.
Well, I think
Can I say it just so
Go ahead.
like,
Do it.
so we all, I don't know, because like you can have a hotel on Main Street, right? Because you're allowed to have a hotel. And part of our shtick was you can't have mini hotels in residential neighborhoods,
Right.
but you can have hotels on Main Street or wherever it's commercially. But I mean, I think we should think about it because we're just first hearing this, but my initial reaction is positive in that, yeah, I mean, if it's, yeah. I mean, I think we're in a crisis and we have to act appropriately. And if we want to nurture, if we want those spaces to be mixed use, we're going to lose those opportunities.
Yeah, we want to.
They get gobbled up by the these types of short-term.
Right. We want residential properties to be gobbled up by full-time residents, whether they are a rental or an owner. We want people to be able to live in this community. And then if you live in this community and you want to augment your income, you know, go on vacation, rent out your place via short-term rental, or do it, you know, do the extra bedroom in your house every single night for the extra income. Like, all of that's fine. But I think what we're doing with this law is we're saying we want to make sure that people can live full-time in this community and that the community doesn't just turn into investment properties.
I guess, let me even bolster the argument. It occurs to me, if you want a hotel in those zones, go through planning board and make a hotel. Don't backdoor it with Airbnb.
And
There's
that was
still
another
residences, right? Even though you're in a commercial district, it's a single family home or a duplex or something like that, right? It's residential. So you would have to go to planning board to be a hotel. You couldn't just, you know.
Yep.
So,
and I'm glad you're bringing up the hotel piece, because that's something that I feel like was a bit vague, even in our NBR. And when I took a crack at editing the B2 to make it kind of an improved version of NBR, I specifically addressed hotels. And I've asked our attorney to look at the language that I included for hotels, and he added to it a little bit, but I think I want you guys to look at it carefully. Like, look in the draft of the B2 zoning and see what I did in terms of permitting hotels. So I think that speaks to the point that you were just raising, KT.
and also, though, I mean, we ran into this with, like, what is a hotel, what is a hostel, what is a bed and breakfast thing? Aren't you attempting to streamline the category there as well, or no? Is that a different issue?
Yeah, that's I mean, that's not as important. I think the reason that that was tricky previously was because our definition of a hotel was fairly rigid and included like specific number of rooms. And now what I propose is like, we just use the definition of a hotel that the town uses, which, you know, so we're not, you know, reinventing a wheel, just use the definition that they've already vetted when they just updated their code and gateway stuff.
Oh, so it's new. Okay, good. I
Yeah,
have
they
to
have
look at that.
they have a different definition, which is just like, you know, our definition, you know, it's like you look at old code and a lot of it is just like unnecessarily specific. Like a
Yeah,
hotel.
I'm sorry, I
think
haven't
is-
had a chance to look at that, but as I said the last time, in concept, I'm all in.
Yeah, I mean, Corey and I, you know, I worked on it and I got Corey's blessing and I've had Will look at it. So I need you guys to take a look at it. But what I really liked about it is how it's basically an NBR. It's a version of the NBR, and then, you know, some things were updated.
So let's just make sure, do we need to take an action here? Are we making a revision?
Yeah, I
and
think this
going
is
back
this
out
is
to public hearing?
this is
Are
a
we gonna
I
wait and
yeah, I
think
would
about
consider
it,
this-
and we'll come back and do that next time?
no, I would consider this a material revision that should involve a new public hearing.
Yeah,
So I'd like to,
I want to know if you,
I'd like to motion that we set a public hearing for the next meeting for this
Second.
short-term rental law. And I can update it tonight, just striking out
well,
a
it's
few
just a
words.
deletion, right?
Yep.
Great.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Yeah.
And then
Aye.
Ariana, what date can we do a public hearing? Can we do it March 10th?
I believe that we can. It might be cutting it a little bit close. But that would just mean that I'll put it in the Freeman instead of I'm looking at the calendar right now because that's exactly 2 weeks from today. Yeah, it is. So we would not be able to put it into the Hudson Valley 1 paper because that would only be a week out. We need 10 days, so we could do it in the Freeman, unless you guys want to wait till the end of March, which I feel like you don't.
No, let's do it March 10th for the end.
Okay.
I just want to say out loud again, because I hear a lot of confusion about this, especially because other communities are passing laws, and other communities that don't already have a rental registration law, like we don't need to add a checklist and all this stuff. Like we already did that work. We're not asking for a special permit for these things or permitting thing. And if you are already doing this, you need to be registered with the village because our existing law already requires these types of rentals, as we were discussing earlier, need to be registered and annually inspected. And I think it's a great thing to put on your listing, you know?
Yeah, and I think the difference between our law and some other communities is like, you know, this is like my mantra for everything that we consider in terms of legislation. Like, can we enforce this thing? And like, we don't have overly creative number of days or number of months. Like our early drafts had that stuff. And I think the more we chewed on it, we got rid of it and we simplified it because we want to empower our residents. We want to empower our building department to like figure these things out and you know, do things for the right reasons. And like, and there aren't like funny stipulations. Well, you know, you can do even if you're not the full-time resident and if you're an on-site manager, then you can do an Airbnb. And I think that just like opens up doors for too much wiggle room. And, you know, the spirit of this concept is, if this is your property, Airbnb the heck out of it. That's fine. If it's an investment property, that's a different beast. And, you know, that should be vetted through a different process. To KT's point, if you want to open up a hotel, we have a process for that. You know, it's, you know, I'm really proud of actually the edits that we made because we've thought about this for such a long time and made changes like as we go and as we consider different things. Okay, so we have a public hearing. So let's move on to our next item here. Fire station change order. So we got a note from our architect at Alfondre, and we ran into a little challenge where the ground at the fire station was essentially more smushy than we would like it to be. So it's going to require some additional attention and therefore expense. And we're optimistic that our construction manager thinks that it may cost less than $40,000, but right now we need to go ahead and approve a change order where it will not exceed $40,000 in total. Bill, did you want to add any color to this? Because I think you might know some additional information.
It's put us back a couple of weeks, but we got a pretty quick estimate. So hats off to our CM on that. Yeah, it's mushy. It's there's water. It's what's required to fix it is a lot of gravel and sheathing and different types of soil to build it up. It's 25% of the footprint of the new firehouse on the west and north sides of the building. And I mean, we sort of knew it was a wet piece of parcel. Now we know for sure, so we need to fix it. And I think the price quoted seems quite fair.
Yeah, and we're optimistic that it might end up come in less than that. Our construction manager has really been an advocate on our behalf, and we've been happy with Palumbo, and they're going to push to try to find us, you know, the way to get this work done for even less than the 40K. So fingers are crossed. So my motion is that we approve the change order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the next item is, so at our previous meeting, we went ahead and approved using Atlantic Testing Labs. So this is basically just an addendum that specifically relates to the work they're going to help us with regarding the stormwater pollution prevention plan inspections. So I motion that we go ahead and approve this addendum.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Just to add, Tim, if you're interested in what that's all about, there's a link to what they do is for testing. If you're interested, it's in the agenda.
Okay. So the next item is, this is great. We're working closely with Hudson River Valley Greenway. They will provide us with $135,000 or up to $135,000 to put in a little stub to get folks using the Empire State Trail from the intersection at Henry W. and North Chestnut across the property, which used to have a Napa, and Roddy has been more recently using it as a garage, and he has plans to put in a multi-story mixed-use building there. But basically that southern portion of Roddy's property, we're working with Roddy on an easement so that we could connect the Empire State Trail. And the idea would be that, via the easement language, Roddy would keep it clear of snow and ice, and, any larger capital improvements would be the village's responsibility, but all the initial work would be covered via financial assistance from Greenway. So I just want to go ahead, and this is basically a boilerplate cooperative agreement between us and Greenway. We've entered into these before, like particularly when we did the Sojourner Truth Park upgrades down on Plains Road. So this is a document similar to that. So I motion that we enter into this agreement with Greenway.
Second.
Anyone a second, and then ask any questions?
I seconded.
Any questions?
It's awesome.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then item number 8, we have the legal services retainer with the law firm that we've been using for several years now. So we work with Will Frank, and Will sent us a note and an updated retainer agreement where he's actually reduced our monthly retainer from $5,200 per month to $4,500 per month, which will end up saving us $8,400 over the 12-year period, or 12-month period. And then he also put in an additional provision in terms of the hourly rate if we end up going above the hours that would be baked into the retainer. So thanks, Will, for trying to essentially cut your fees during this trickier time when municipalities, including ours, are struggling with revenues. So I motion that we go ahead and enter into a new retainer agreement with Will Frank's law firm.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the next item, the EPB requested that we support the resolution Senate Bill S1113, and this involves prohibiting the use of gas-powered leaf and lawn blowers during the summertime, basically between May 1st and September 30th, so that you could use them in the early spring and you could use them in the fall. I feel like this is not an environmental proposal. I think this is a proposal that relates to, people being annoyed by how loud and annoying leaf blowers are. Alex has been working on a draft about why, for better reasons, why we should actually support or encourage people to, if you have to use a leaf blower, use an electric one, or maybe not use them at all, or think about expanding your lawn, or thinking about supporting a diversity of plant species on your property as opposed to just lawns, or maybe even allowing leaves to end up on your lawn. It's probably good for the, there's probably ecological benefits to that. So we're working on a resolution that's just encouraging community members to think of these things more broadly as opposed to just a ban. But that's my opinion on it. If anyone else wants to chime in on this proposed legislation that's sitting
If I
up.
could, Yeah, if I could summarize, because I feel like I've been, working through this issue like publicly, which has been fun, because I'm one of those people who does not like leaf blowers, but for environmental reasons, but then, and I was the one who actually was like, I was like, oh, there's, Senator Lou has this bill, that's going through committee right now. You guys should check it out. And then I kept thinking about the issue in terms of climate justice, which is kind of a newer concept in terms of government, right? Where you really think about like, workers and marginalized communities, like at the forefront of, anything that you do for the environment. And then it kind of makes, it makes it a very different issue. So what I started drafting in the middle of the night the other night, is a resolution that would do better than S113, urging the bodies that can, like the state legislature, to actually hold the manufacturers of gas powered, fossil fuel based lawn maintenance products, hold them accountable, and urge them to come up, the state to come up with, different buyback programs, rebates, the same thing that, we've done with, the switch from, old school fairy lights to the LED ones. That NYSERDA program was one of the most successful programs, in New York State history and has made a huge difference, right? So why can't we do that in this aspect too? So we'll circle back with another with something I think better than S113 that I think will help our community a lot more than just trying to support a ban that might not achieve any environmental benefits, because it just would criminalize instead one kind of use of something and not criminalize people who can go out and buy new stuff anytime.
Yeah, good
I
point.
think it's been great that we did this conversation, because there's a lot of spaces in the environmental movement that are not familiar with environmental injustice and the issues associated with environmental racism and the disproportionate, climate impacts on the poor and Black and brown communities. First off, I don't want to use police for this. Like, we've already had this conversation, like that we want to take laws off the books for quality of life stuff. And I just looked, it's civil fine of more than 100. Like, let's literally think about how this would play out. Like, I'm visioning like somebody across the street from me with a leaf blower and the police showing up to find them. Like, let's just think about that, because that feels really awful to me, and in the opposite direction of what we are trying to do as a society in terms of rethinking policing and community largely. I also think, I'm all about like we should compost, and individuals need to do these behaviors, and we need to model these behaviors, especially if we can do these things. But at the end of the day, it's corporations and systems that need to move. And it's kind of blaming the victim, this kind of law, like the heavy lift needs to happen at the top. And, yes, do all the things because we need to create awareness, but like, I don't lose sleep at night when I don't do all my composting, because I got to get through a pandemic just like everybody else does. And, there used to be a time in America where there was just one can and we threw everything into it, right? That was what was provided in our environments. And then we had a movement by which we added another can that said recycling. And there was lots of people that did that before we had those two cans, and it was really hard. But once we had those two cans, it just came part of what we do, right? So like our built environment, our systems, what allows us to do things and not do things. When you back up from a law like this, it's not attacking the problem at the right place, and it actually causes more problems. So that's my
You just
37
summarized.
cents.
Yeah, no, you just summarized basically why I haven't slept in 2 days, because I was thinking about what happens if somebody actually called the police and such a law were passed. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. So thank you.
And I think we do a really good job of that here, you know, like we actually try to envision what it would be like, and concepts are so important, but like rubber hits the road is what really matters. Like, what is it really going to be like? Is it enforceable? Is, you know, like these really just like practical, you know,
and also how to actually
considerations.
solve the problem, you know, that brought it up in the first place. You know, for those who it's an just a strictly let's get off fossil fuels problem, these solutions, you know, these types of laws don't help. For those that are disguising their disdain for people who make noise, you know.
And I, you know, I'm sure it's of good intent in whatever it is. It just is, it's wrong problem, wrong solution.
Yeah, I thank you,
But we'll
Alex
work
and
on
KT.
it, yeah.
Thank you, Alex and KT. I second your comments, and I think the draft that Alex has been spearheading looks great. You know, and again, it's not a ban; it's a resolution trying to educate and empower community members to think a little bit differently and maybe make some different choices that hopefully will move the needle on this as opposed to a ban.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, guys.
All right, next item. So is this resolution, is this game ready?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us.
Here we are. Our resolution to house New Paltz and New York. So, you know, it's the most wonderful time of the year, you know, when New York State Legislature, you know, is working towards coming up with some sort of budget, and they're like working on all these bills and stuff to address all these issues. And obviously we have a lot of issues, like I was just talking about a little bit before on the rental registry and all of that. So a year ago, March 25th, 2020, we passed a resolution basically urging, you know, urging the legislature to take action to cancel rent in light of, you know, everything going on, the pandemic. So this is like building off of that, and urging for the state legislature to take action. They have a ton of bills, you know, that have been proposed that are before them that there's a lot of movement on. I can kind of just like read this a little bit more than just summarizing it, but it's calling on the New York State Legislature to house New York by housing, to house New Paltz by housing New York, and memorializing support of the following bills of 2021, the COVID-19 Housing Relief and Recovery for All Act, which is in both houses, the Senate and the Assembly, and it would cancel rent and certain mortgage payments. Also, the Housing Access Voucher Program Act, which also is in both houses and is pretty self-explanatory, and the proposed act to prohibit eviction without good cause, which as of this writing, I didn't see the Assembly same as, but it seems like there's quite a bit of movement you know, on it in general. So whereas it was on March 21st, 2020, our board called on New Paltz landlords to freeze all rent hikes and further urged landlords to have considerable flexibility by allowing more time for tenants to pay their rents and modified payment schedules, as well as the waiving of late fees for both residential and commercial tenants during this trying time. And whereas a week later, we passed that resolution I referenced a moment ago. It was number 12 of 2020, calling on landlords to acknowledge this unprecedented situation by adopting measures to help our fellow community members and business owners who may have difficulty paying rent during this challenging time, specifically through a commitment to a community-wide policy of landlord flexibility with both commercial and residential rents. And whereas we also previously, as memorialized in that resolution of 2020, called on the New York State Legislature and the governor, as well as our county executive and county legislature, to acknowledge this unprecedented situation by adopting measures to help our fellow community members and business owners who may have difficulty paying rent during this challenging time, specifically by canceling rent. And whereas the COVID-19 crisis negative impacts on all aspects of our local economy, from individuals' income to local businesses' revenue, and the great uncertainties we as a community faced when we initially called for rent flexibility and memorialized support for statewide legislation to cancel rent continue to be uncertainties today, nearly a year later, and are likely to remain uncertain at best for the unseeable future. And whereas the great majority of people in our community rent their homes and many of our local businesses rent their brick and mortar spaces, and whereas the Village of New Paltz community urgently needs immediate relief in the form of rent being canceled, payable by the state directly to landlords, greater flexibility in landlord-tenant agreements and practices, access to real support such as with the proposed housing access voucher program and the protections promised by the act to prohibit eviction without good cause. And whereas court records show that evictions are on the docket in nearby Ulster County courts, specifically Kingston, in the coming weeks, despite the problems outlined in our resolution passed nearly 1 year ago, being just as much an emergency and a crisis today as it was 1 year ago, if not worse. And further, despite a statewide eviction moratorium being in place under most conditions until at least May 1st, 2021. And whereas the current reality is that 1.3 million households in New York State have fallen behind on rent due to COVID-19, yet funding for housing was not included in Governor Cuomo's executive budget. And therefore, be it resolved that the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees supports and commends efforts in the New York State Legislature to address these issues, including COVID-19 Housing Relief and Recovery for All Act, which would cancel rent, certain mortgage payments, the Housing Access Voucher Program, and the proposed act to prohibit eviction without good cause, as well as packages proposed to raise the funds needed to make housing New Yorkers not only possible, but obvious. And therefore, be it further resolved that State Senator Mike Martucci and State Assemblyperson Kevin Cahill please co-sponsor this package of bills that currently lacks any support from any of the New York State legislatures representing anyone in Ulster County, and advocate for these bills on the floor. And therefore, be it further resolved that due to the fact that as of this writing, the S3082, which is the good cause eviction bill, is missing an assembly, same as the Village of New Paltz Board of Trustees urges Assemblyman Kevin Cahill to please carry this bill and urge his colleagues to join him as co-sponsors. And be it further resolved that the village clerk is directed to send a copy of this resolution to everybody.
Thanks, Alex. Can you do what would be the response from legislators who might ordinarily side with this sentiment as to why they're not supporting it currently? Or
I think I think honestly there's just nervousness, the same nervousness I feel every single time I open my mouth about anything as a tenant, of, you know, oh no, what if I upset, you know, this whole group of people, you know, in the community that has so much more power because they are the lords of the land, and or maybe the real estate industry, aka lobby, you know what I mean, who control a lot. So I think there's a little bit of anxiety on that end, and, you know, worries about people who tend to side, you know, in that part of the issue, but there's nobody not getting money that they're owed in any of these scenarios. And that's why there's a couple different packages of bills that would, you know, different ways that have been proposed to like fund this. One is the MRTA, the marijuana tax. You know, there's so many ways. There's another option to, you know, maybe tax the super wealthy, you know, stop giving them tax breaks, but, you know, maybe start helping out people who need housing. You know, honestly, I don't really see there being like any sort of legitimate or even valid you know, reason to be hesitant on any of this. I really do see it as, you know, that's the influence of big real estate.
got it. Any other questions from the board?
So thank you so much for doing this work and putting it together. You did the context and the ask and all of it really well. Thank you. So I mean, I don't want to like get anybody excited or anything, but I'm hearing that the money that's going to come from the federal government is not, it's not, you know, we shouldn't be doing dances about anything ever. But if you think about the hole that needs to get filled for to cancel rent, it's huge, right? So what we get from the federal government is going to matter. And I feel like there have been good ideas about how to get the revenue to do it, but it is a very big number, which is an important thing to note because that shows the enormity of the problem. But I also think that it's not always on us to figure it out, right? Like we can be like, you got to do this, figure out how to get the money. Because this is a crisis and it's very important. And I want to say again, as you did reiterate, Alex, you know, this doesn't leave landlords hanging. This is basically the state paying rent because that's what the state needs to do when you're in a pandemic crisis.
Like, please use my tax dollars to help my neighbor, like for once. So can I guess I made my motion by reading the thing.
Second.
Thanks.
All in favor? Aye.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks,
I'm
Ellen.
gonna do some social media on this later on. Just big thanks to you know, Sia and like her whole crew with Housing Justice for All for their support on this. You know, mostly just moral support on this. But I joined a few phone banks with Housing Justice for All and was so inspired. And that's, you know, why I realized we had to write this resolution. So thanks, guys.
I mean, Tim, shouldn't the banks be for it? Like,
Yeah, it seems
isn't
so.
there like a perverse reason to fix it because of the real estate industry?
Yeah, I don't know. Interesting idea, though. Okay, moving on to our next resolution. So this is regarding fundraising for the proposed skate garden. So there's a group of volunteers who are going to organize a formal fundraising effort, and Alex has been working feverishly on this project, and we're all super excited that we've got some other strong-willed people very involved. You know, people who have experienced fundraising, and we have a lot of young people who are really optimistic that this thing gets built. So this is a memorializing resolution that's just saying that our village board is supportive of the project and that we've arranged with the New Paltz Community Foundation that they're going to be the conduit to receive donations, you know, just as they did with the playground project. And then in the resolution, we also include that Kristen Bowe is the chairperson for the fundraising committee. So, you know, we're just dotting I's to make sure that everything has been memorialized. You know, that's essentially the function of this resolution. So that's my motion. If someone would like to second it, and then we can discuss further. Seconded. Any questions?
Just gratitude to everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. I mean, I remember when you and I were running and we talked about making this a reality, and you you know, ran with this, and I'm just so impressed on how you've gotten everyone together to be a part of this and make it happen. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle. I was thinking about my rambling text to you the other day about this, and like, you were like, yeah, and you know, that definitely keeps me going.
Yay. I mean, it's just so good for so many reasons. And I am so excited about it. And everyone I talk to is equally so excited about it. So thanks.
Yay.
Did we vote? Did we all in favor? Aye. Okay, next resolution is more perfunctory because we have an election coming up in May. And this is, you know, just the thing that we would do every 2 years. So I motion that we move this general election and no registration day resolution.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And then I asked Ari to provide us with an update on the work that's being done. As our board has discussed previously, our intention is to move away from springtime elections and then to use the County Board of Election Services so that they can host the village elections during the irregular election cycle, which would be in the fall, and that would start in November of 2023. But there are different things that need to get done to make that happen. So I just wanted to ask Ari to fill us all in.
Yeah, so I spoke with Ashley Dittis at the Board of Elections, and as well as Will Frank, and we've all been working on this a little bit, and she got their counsel to help us with some of the wording. So we're pretty set to go with that, but it has to be adopted within 30 days of the election. So if we do it before then, we actually have to have a special election. So we're going to wait till April 14th to actually do the adoption of the language which feels so close to May 4th, but she said that would give them plenty of time and it's not an issue at all. They'll be able to get it on our ballots and it won't be a problem. And it will likely be on the back of the ballot. So this is a pretty important point just for the community to be super aware of, is that it won't be on the front of the ballot, but that the election inspectors and everybody who'll be working the election are very familiar with reminding people that they need to flip the ballot over. So that's something that we should just include in our publication, just so we can make sure that the public is super aware. But yeah, that's our timeline, is basically April 14th. We do that adoption of the wording, and there's some amount of publication between then and the election that we have the timeline for. And yeah, we don't really have to do anything between now and then aside from our own publicity.
You know what I think's funny about every time there's a referendum and everyone's like, you know what? It's on the back of the ballot. Be really careful. It's on the back of the ballot. And it's know. And it's like, if there's ever a referendum on the front of the ballot, I'm not going to fill it in. I'm going to be like, this is not a real referendum. It's on the front of the ballot.
What kind of referendum is this on the front? Right before our eyes.
All right.
Can I just mention, I know that Alberta had the packet for candidates. I don't see it on the website yet, but we should post that to the website, the information that people who want to run for office need to know in terms of timeline, milestones, tasks.
It's not on the elections page.
There isn't. Where's the elections page?
I think it's under permits and forms, honestly, but you can get there from the clerk's page also.
Oh, there is. See, that was okay, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, it's all there. Okay,
Yeah, so
maybe could we just do a website the way you
put, like
we get an
main
email?
Page post? Yeah, definitely.
Oh my God, what was that? Oh, yes, we have an opening on the Affordable Housing Board that I wanted to make sure to mention, that Michelle just nudged me about. Totally off topic, but yeah. Can we do that? Just do on the homepage so that it gets spit out to everybody and on the email list.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and then we can all share that link. That would be great if we share it far and wide.
Guess what day May 4th is? You all already know, right?
May the 4th?
Yeah.
Be with you?
No. What else is it?
Sorry.
It's my birthday.
I was just going to say, it's one of our favorite Tauruses.
And it's Village Election Day. Okay, happy early birthday. Let's sing. Or you can give an update on Affordable Housing Board.
I just wanted to mention about that the county's doing a affordable, some kind of housing action plan. So Alex and I have been talking to other communities, and I think Tim's doing a call with the executive later this week. Wait, what day is today? Tomorrow. And so they're rolling out a housing action plan, and they want to hear from local governments. So we're not really sure what this all is, but it's happening, and we want to be sure to communicate up how we're trying to address this housing crisis. And I think there's an opportunity to work across municipalities too, because Woodstock, we had a really, we've started a nice conversation with them, and I know there's you know, we have similarities and differences, right? But we all have a housing crisis on steroids.
Next item, I motion that we move bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
I
Second, aye.
Bill, you want to give us a planning board update?
Sure, they met last week. Their planning board's in pre-app land. There's an application pre-app in front of the planning board. The owners of Murphy's, 107 Main Street, want to do some improvements to their restaurant. Includes
Is that the
some
new
cosmetic-
owners of Murphy's? Like, was Murphy's sold?
Yeah, did somebody buy it?
Edward and Gina Carroll.
Yeah. So I think those
Yeah.
are new owners.
Mhm.
Right.
Right. Okay.
And they want to do some improvements. They want to expand their clientele. A significant thing is bringing the bathroom downstairs. It's just very preliminary at this point, but they want to spruce up the place and make it more enjoyable, I suppose, for a new clientele that they're looking for. The second part of the meeting was Attorney Rick Golden discussing the housing complex up on that we've been discussing, the new Paltz apartments complex. He spoke for about 45 minutes on what the planning board's responsibilities would be, what to look out for, answered a lot of questions. Consequently, I thought that was a very informative conversation. I've invited Rick, as well as our village attorney, Will Frank, to attend our joint meeting on March 10th to sort of lay out what's all involved with this very large housing project. So I think that'll be very helpful to both of our boards, as well as to any other planning board members who didn't make it to the meeting last time. So those are the two major things that were discussed.
So I just want to expand on that. So the proposed apartment complex that will be developed by the Moriello family. So the proposal includes annexing property that is south of the college into the village. So that's the village board's purview, and any sort of annexation requires a seeker process. But in addition to that, when you do regular planning board reviews like subdivision and site plan, that also requires seeker. So originally there was discussion about having our village board, since we're doing the annexation piece, because that's part of our responsibilities to consider whether or not this property should be annexed, that we would also take on the seeker responsibilities. So we spent a fair amount of time over the last couple of days to figure out, because I mean, I'm personally in belief that we should continue, just as we would with any other land use application, to have the planning board handle the seeker process to determine whether it's a type 1, type 2, or unlisted action, and everything that relates as far as seeker. So the planning board would end up being the seeker lead agency as opposed to the village board. And then we would rely on the planning board seeker determinations for our annexation process. The attorneys can fill us in, but I thought that was an important distinction to make, and curious if you guys have any other thoughts on handling it this way or differently. Okay, well, we'll learn more on March 10th when our attorneys meet with us and continue to discuss what's involved in this project. And go ahead.
Rick's offered some really great guidance and makes it very clear exactly what to expect and what road we're going down. So,
yeah, I feel like I've heard from many people that seeker can sometimes feel clumsy and unintuitive, and Rick is uniquely good at explaining kind of this opaque legalese in ways that regular human beings can digest. So I think we're in good hands with Rick as an attorney, and also our regular village counsel, Will Frank. Any ZBA liaison update?
No, there's been no meets.
No meetings. Okay. I don't think we have anything else. Can you guys think of anything we should add to this meeting? Otherwise, we should adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I second Bill's motion.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.